All right, let's dive in to one of the most important, but maybe one of the most misunderstood documents in the entire financial world, the Independent Auditor's Report. And hey, by the time we're done here, you're going to know exactly how to decode one and really understand the story it's telling. So let's get right into it. So let's just start with the biggest question of all, right? A company puts out its financial results, and you, whether you're an investor, a student, or a business owner, you look at them. But how do you really know that what you're seeing is the truth? How can you be sure those numbers are fair and accurate? Well, that's exactly the problem this one single report is built to solve. And this diagram right here, this is going to be our roadmap for this whole explainer. Now, I know it might look a little complex at first glance, but it really just boils down to a few key ideas we're about to walk through. You see how it starts with the main goal, then it branches out into the two big possible outcomes, and then it lays out the key sections of the report. Just think of this as our guide as we break it all down step by step. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the auditor's mission. What is their job really? Well, you can think of them as an independent third-party expert who's been brought in to take a deep, hard look at a company's books. Their entire role is to give an unbiased, professional opinion. You know, the absolute best way to think about it is like this. It's a financial health inspection for a company. Seriously, just like a health inspector comes into a restaurant to check for cleanliness and safety, an auditor comes in to check a company's financial statements to make sure they're fair, they're accurate, and they're following all the established rules. So here it is, the official definition. The independent auditor's report is the final product of that whole inspection. Now, it's not a guarantee that the company is going to be a huge success, but it is an expert's opinion. It tells you whether the company's financial story, the one they're telling through their statements, is a fair and accurate picture of what really went down. Now we're getting to the most critical part of the entire report. After all that work, all that digging, the auditor has to make a call. And this leads to a huge fork in the road, which results in one of two main types of opinions. So on one path, you've got an unmodified opinion. This is basically like getting a clean bill of health from your doctor. It's the good news. But on the other path, you have a modified opinion. And this is more like a doctor's note that comes with some serious concerns or things you need to follow up on. It's a signal that the auditor found something that absolutely needs to be pointed out. Yep, an unmodified opinion, that's the gold standard. It's the all-clear signal that tells the market, yes, we've gone through these numbers with a fine-tooth comb, and they present a true and fair view. For anyone relying on these numbers, investors, banks, you name it, this is exactly what they are hoping to see. It's a collective sigh of relief. Okay, so how is this opinion actually presented? Let's peel back the layers and break down the anatomy of the report itself. Because if you understand its structure, you can find what you need super quickly and see exactly how the auditor got to their conclusion. Every single report follows this clear structure. It kicks off with the opinion right at the top. Bam, that's the main conclusion. Right after that, you get the basis for opinion, which is the section that explains how they got there. And then there's a section called Key Audit Matters, which honestly is where things get really, really interesting. And that brings us to Key Audit Matters, or KAMs for short. This section is so fascinating because it gives you a peek behind the curtain. It shows you the biggest, most significant, most complex issues the auditor had to wrestle with. So, for example, a KAM might describe how the auditor checked out a tech company's valuation of some brand new, totally unproven AI technology. This is where you find out what really kept them up at night. Okay, so what happens when things aren't so simple? What do you do when you see a modified opinion? This is where knowing how to read that fine print becomes absolutely critical. When you spot a modified opinion, you gotta look for three things. First, hunt down the basis for opinion section. That'll tell you the why. Then, you need to identify the specific type of modification. That's the what. This could be a qualified opinion, which means there's a problem, but it's isolated to one area. Or it could be way more serious, like an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. And finally, look for a summary that explains the so what, the real impact of the issue. But hang on, it's so important to understand this next part. Not every single extra paragraph you see in an auditor's report is a red flag on their main opinion. There's a really important distinction we have to make here. And that distinction is called an emphasis of matter paragraph. See, this is totally different from a modified opinion. The auditor is basically saying, hey, my overall opinion is clean, but there's something so important already disclosed in the company's own notes that I need to shine a huge spotlight on it to make sure you don't miss it. So yeah, think of it as a spotlight, not a red flag. So, after digging into all that detail, let's zoom back out for a second. Why do we even go through all this trouble? Why is this one document so fundamental to the entire world of business and finance? Well, the answer is all about who uses it. Investors depend on it to make smart decisions about their money. Students, the next generation of accountants and business leaders, they study these things to learn the ropes. And companies themselves, they use them to build credibility with everyone. Banks, suppliers, partners. It's a cornerstone document for so many people. And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. The entire system of public investment and commerce is built on a foundation of trust. And the independent auditor's report, it is a fundamental pillar of that trust. Without it, we'd have no reliable way to know if what companies are telling us is actually true. So the next time you're looking at a company's annual report, please, don't just skip past the auditor section. You now have the map. You can decode it, you know what to look for, you know what the key terms mean, and you know how to read between the lines. So the only question left is, what story is it going to tell you?